You know, when we were getting ready for this deep dive looking into Dame Maggie Smith's work, I gotta say, something struck me. It's kind of a head scratcher, really.
Oh,
This woman, known for these powerful roles, this incredible presence, turns out she was, by all accounts, really quite shy.
is that right?
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, that just makes me want to dig deeper, How does someone who shied away from the spotlight become such a legend on stage and screen? Thankfully, we've got this New York Times obituary, and it's fantastic, really
Yeah.
detailed, plus a bunch of the pieces we could dig into.
Well, and what's interesting is that kind of push and pull, that was there right from the beginning. We're talking 1950s, London stage, the whole bit.
Hmm.
Even as a young actress, those typical ingenue roles, the innocent types, they didn't really appeal to her. There's this weariness and edge to even her early characters.
Wow, are you serious? So even back then, she had that ability to cut through all the BS, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, take the film The Pumpkin Eater. It's from 1964. She plays this, well, she's not your typical house guest, let's put it that way. It wasn't a huge part or anything, but even then, the critics, they picked up on it. This knack for playing characters who weren't afraid to speak their minds.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the connection here. This wasn't someone chasing fame for the sake of it. She wanted to embody these interesting, complicated characters, even if it meant being the quirky friend instead of, the leading lady.
Exactly. And the stage, oh, that's where she really shone. We're talking six Evening Standard Awards.
Get out.
No, seriously, that's a record, by the way.
6 awards. Wow. And, on stage, there's no hiding. That's pure talent, that stage presence shining through. So what kind of range are we talking about here? Give me the rundown.
You want versatility. She did it all. Shakespeare's Desdemona, the ultimate tragic heroine, right? But then she also played a tour guide in this play called Lettuce and Lovage, who tells these outrageous, hilarious lies about historic houses.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Won a Tony for that one, actually.
You see, this is what blows my mind. This woman, a force of nature on stage, winning awards left and right. Yet I read in her obituary it took decades and a certain TV show for her to really become a household name.
It's kind of wild when you think about it, right? All that talent, all those awards, and yet movie stardom, it didn't come easy. Makes you wonder what it really takes to become a household name. It's not always just about talent, Sometimes it's timing, that perfect role at the perfect moment.
Speaking of awards, and I know where you're going with this, but before we get to that cultural phenomenon, she did win 2 Oscars.
And not for just any roles, mind you. We're talking about performances that solidified her reputation as an actress of incredible depth, incredible nuance.
Okay, spill the tea. What should our listeners be queuing up if they want a taste of Maggie Smith at her absolute finest? The first Oscar was for the prime of Miss Jean Brodie back in 1969.
Now there's a role and a performance that really grabs you. She plays this, well, she's this eccentric teacher, this Miss Jean Brodie, and the way she handled this character's complexity is really something special.
Okay, eccentric teacher, you had me at eccentric. That's going on the list. What about that second Oscar?
That one came in '78 for California Suite, a Neil Simon comedy,
A
actually.
little bit of a change of pace there.
Shows her range, that's for sure. She plays an actress, Diana Barry, and it turns out to be, well, a rather bittersweet night at the Academy Awards.
Well, hold on. An actress playing an actress on Oscar night. How perfect is that?
Right. And she just nails it. The humor, the sadness, all the layers of a woman dealing with fame, ambition, you name it, all happening at the biggest event in Hollywood. These weren't just parts in a movie. They were chances for her to vanish into these characters, become someone else entirely, which, if you think about it, seems to be what she was best at.
And maybe, just maybe, what let this shy person thrive in a world that often demands you to put yourself out there?
It's a thought, isn't it? But we can't talk about Maggie Smith without talking about, well, the elephant in the room, or should I say the Dowager Countess. Downton Abbey. I mean, that show launched her into a whole new stratosphere of fame, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. Like the world rediscovered Maggie Smith, only this time she's draped in these amazing clothes, delivering those killer Violet Crawley lines.
Right. And at an age when a lot of actors, they get pushed to the sidelines, she becomes this global icon. It's almost funny, right? Here she is playing this character who's totally suspicious of anything modern, and yet she's winning over a whole new crowd of fans.
But it's not just the character, is it? It's how Maggie Smith delivers those lines.
Yeah.
She could make a comment about electricity sound like the wittiest thing you've ever heard.
No doubt. She had this knack for making even the most ordinary lines just crackle with intelligence. But as tempting as it is to just spend this whole deep dive quoting the Dowager Countess,
Oh, believe me, I could.
We should probably touch on the fact that her later career was about way more than just one famous role. I mean, hello, Harry Potter, anyone.
Right, from Victorian England to Hogwarts. Talk about a range.
And again, she disappears into this role, Professor McGonagall. That stern but caring vibe, that quiet authority. It's no wonder she won over a whole new generation of fans.
You know what I love? Even with those blockbuster movies, it wasn't always adults who'd stop her on the street,
Are
right?
you thinking of that interview where she said it was mostly kids who'd recognize her?
Exactly, asking her if she was really a cat, which is just the cutest thing ever. But it speaks to how completely she embodied these characters, right? To the point where kids believed in the magic she brought to the screen.
And let's not forget, Harry Potter, just one piece of this late career resurgence. Remember, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel and Becoming Jane, proving that even later in her career, she wasn't afraid to take on these varied, challenging characters.
It really is amazing the amount of work she did, even into her 70s, her 80s. And what gets me is even with all that success, in a field that often requires you to be seen, to be heard, she was, by all accounts, incredibly private, incredibly reserved.
It says a lot about her dedication to her craft,
Yeah.
to disappearing into these roles instead of chasing the spotlight. It's a quality that really connects with people, even today.
Makes you wonder, if you took away the awards, the fame, all those unforgettable characters, who was Maggie Smith really? At her core.
The million-dollar question, right? And in a way, it's a question that maybe even she struggled with.
It's like we've been trying to peek behind the mask, seeing all these amazing characters, these personalities she brought to life so brilliantly. But the woman behind it all, still a mystery.
And maybe that's a powerful legacy in itself. In a world obsessed with celebrity, with everyone shouting, "Look at me," she let her work, her characters, do the talking for her.
It makes you think about something she said, actually, her obituary. It mentioned she called herself deeply insecure, even dreaded watching herself on screen. Which, when you think about it, is pretty remarkable for someone who built a career on embodying other people's emotions.
It does make you see those sharp-tongued characters, those witty comebacks, in a whole new light, doesn't it? Like maybe those roles were her way of being free, of expressing herself in a way that felt safer than, say, a sit-down interview.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know for sure, but it adds another layer to her work, don't you think? Like we're seeing a double performance,
Yep.
the character on the surface, and then maybe a glimpse of that shyness, that vulnerability underneath.
And that's what makes her so captivating, so human. It reminds us that even the people who seem most at home in the spotlight, they might be wrestling with their own insecurities, their own relationship with fame.
Makes me want to revisit all her films, her plays, looking for those little hints of her inner world. Maybe those glimpses are what make her performances so unforgettable, so relatable. It's like she's giving us all a masterclass in empathy, reminding us that even behind the most polished facade, there's a whole story waiting to be understood.
Well said. Dame Maggie Smith, one of a kind, a true master of her craft who showed us what happens when you let the work, not your ego, take center stage.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And to all our listeners, if this deep dive has piqued your interest, I say go for it. Dive into her filmography, check out her stage work. I guarantee you'll find something new, something surprising each time you watch. Because with Dame Maggie Smith, there's always more to discover, more beneath the surface.